الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مطمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم قالوا طائركم معكم وإن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم الفاتحة
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد
हर मान علی اکبر ہاں پہلے تو ایک آواز پہ اٹھ جاتے تھے بیٹا، اب اتنی صدا پہ بھی پہلو نہیں بدلا، کیا ہو گیا دل بر علی اکبر، ارے تمہیں کیا لے کے جو دم توڑ رہے ہو، مونا سے ہمیشہ کے لیے موڑ رہے ہو، کیوں روٹھے ہو دل بر، آئے جو ہمیں لوٹنے خیمے میں سے دمگر، آئے جو ہمیں لوٹنے خیمے میں سے دمگر، ماں دے گی صدا علی اکبر، علی اکبر، چھن جائے گی چادر، ہاں جب کوئی جوان لاش نظر آتی ہے محشر، ایک یاد سوئے کرب و بلا جاتی ہے محشر، دل روتا ہے کہہ کر علی اکبر، علی اکبر،
محمد وعلی محمد صلوات
بارے دیگر صلوات
کربلا ہو چکی تیار، تقدم ولدی بڑھے آتے ہیں جفاکار، تقدم ولدی چاروں جانب سے ہے یلغار، تقدم ولدی ہوتی ہے تیروں کی بوچھار، تقدم ولدی زد پہ ہے سب میرے انصار، تقدم ولدی کربلا ہو چکی تیار، تقدم ولدی اے میرے لخت جگر، اے میرے پیارے فرزند، ہیں یہ 9 لاکھ تو کیا عزم تو ہے اپنا بلند، آگے آگے صف اول کے رہے اپنا سمن، میرے اصحاب کو پہنچے نہ کہیں کوئی غزن، تیر آتے ہیں لگاتار، تقدم ولدی، کربلا ہو چکی تیار، تقدم ولدی، بھائی عباس سنبھالے رہے لشکر کا نظام، قاسم و محمد رہے نزدیک خیام، تاکہ اس سمت کا رخ کر نہ سکے لشکر شام، اور تم بحر وغا آگے بڑھو لے کے حسام، تیرا اللہ مددگار، تقدم ولدی، کربلا ہو چکی تیار، تقدم ولدی، دین نانا کا مٹے اور نواسا سہلے، یہ نہ ہوگا کبھی ہم سے کوئی کچھ بھی کہہ لے، خون بہتا ہے تو ہم لوگوں کا اس پر پہلے، بھیجتا جنگ پہ عابد کو میں تم سے پہلے، مگر عابد تو ہے بیمار، تقدم ولدی، کربلا ہو چکی تیار، تقدم ولدی، مجھ سے یہ چاہتے ہیں بدر و احد کا بدلہ، میرے اسلاف کی ہر جد و جہد کا بدلہ، دین اسلام کی نصرت کا مدد کا بدلہ، باپ سے تیرے یہ لیں گے تیرے جد کا بدلہ، ہم ہیں اس کے لیے تیار، تقدم ولدی، کربلا ہو چکی تیار، تقدم ولدی، کہیں ایسا نہ ہو زینب کو خبر ہو جائے، اور طلب آن محمد کی ادھر ہو جائے، تاروں کو اذن قبل قمر ہو جائے، میری ترتیب ہی سب زیر و زبر ہو جائے، ہو سکے ہم سے نہ انکار، تقدم ولدی، کربلا ہو چکی تیار، تقدم ولدی. محمد وآل محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
بار دیگر بآواز بلند صلوات. تشنگی مانگ کے دریا کو روانی دے دی، تشنگی مانگ کے دریا کو روانی دے دی، لوح تاریخ کو انمول کہانی دے دی، ناتواں دین نے چلنے کو عصا مانگا تھا، ناتواں دین نے چلنے کو عصا مانگا تھا، تو نے اسلام کو اکبر کی جوانی دے دی. صلوات. Few portion of mercy. بآواز بلند صلوات. شبیر کو پسر وہ خدا نے عطا کیا، شبیر کو پسر وہ خدا نے عطا کیا، صورت میں اور حسن میں محبوب کبریا، نانا کی یاد آتی تھی شہ کو جو بارہا، پیروں بٹھا کے تکتے تھے اکبر کو برملا، سینے کو چومتے کبھی پیشانی چومتے، جوش محبت علی اکبر میں جھومتے، جوش محبت علی اکبر میں جھومتے، خلق حسن شجاعت تو حیدر لیے ہوئے، گفتار میں زبان پیمبر لیے ہوئے، یوسف کو ناز جس پہ وہ جوہر لیے ہوئے، اکبر تھے گویا رحمت داور لیے ہوئے، دنیا میں اہل بیت کے وہ دل کا چین تھے، اکبر تو گویا راحت جان حسین تھے، اکبر تو گویا راحتے جانے حسین تھے. صلوات بھیجے جلوہ فکن فرس پہ ہوا جب وہ خوش سپر تھے پیچھے پیچھے پکڑے جگر شاہ بحر و بر. اندھیر دو جہاں تھا کہ آتا نہ تھا نظر. پاؤں ادھر جو رکھتے تھے پڑتا تھا وہ ادھر. ہر قدم پہ ٹھوکریں جب کھاتے تھے حسین. اکبر کہاں ہو آؤ اکبر کہاں ہو آؤ یہ چلاتے تھے حسین. اکبر کہاں ہو آؤ یہ چلاتے تھے حسین. اکبر یہ عرض کرنے لگے گھوڑا روک کر. اہل حرم ہے خیمے میں ہے بابا نو اگر. ان کو تسلی دیجیے یا شاہ بحر و بر. یہ کہہ کے آیا رن میں شہ والا کا پسر. وہ جنگ کی کہ رن کی فضا کانپنے لگی. لاشیں کو لاش بن کے کفن ڈھانپنے لگی. لاشیں کو لاش بن کے کفن ڈھانپنے لگی. جب شدت آتش سے پریشان ہو گیا آیا حضور شاہ وہ فرزند دلربا. کی عرض مجھ کو پیاس نے بے حال کر دیا. پانی کہیں سے کاش میسر ہو تھوڑا سا. وہ جنگ ہوگی اہل بغا مرحبا کہیں. خیبر شکن بھی خلد میں صلی اللہ کہیں. خیبر شکن بھی خلد میں صلی اللہ کہیں. شبیر کی نگاہ تھی اکبر کی جنگ پر. روئے حسین پاک پہ فضا کی تھی نظر. تکتی تھی چہرہ فضا کا زینب بھی سر بسر. اس طرح سب تھے حالت اکبر سے باخبر. جب اطمینان وہ رخے فضا پہ پاتی تھی. زینب خدا کا شکر ادا کرتی جاتی تھی. زینب خدا کا شکر ادا کرتی جاتی تھی. ناگاہ اشقیاء میں یہ غلجا بجا ہوا. رن میں شہید ہو گیا ہم شکل مصطفیٰ. نیزہ شقی کا سینہ اکبر میں گڑ گیا. رو کر حسین نے کہا واہ مصیبتا. لوگوں ذرا دکھا دو میرے نور عین کو. آنکھوں سے کچھ نظر نہیں آتا حسین کو. آنکھوں سے کچھ نظر نہیں آتا حسین کو. یہ کہہ کے خاک پر گرا زہرا کا لاڈلا. چلنے کی تھی سکت نہ تھا اٹھنے کا حوصلہ. کوہنی کے بل سرکنے لگے شاہ کربلا. کچھ دور آئے لاشائے اکبر نظر پڑا. وہ جانتے تھے حال شہ مشرقین کو. اکبر نے گرتے دم نہ پکارا حسین کو. اکبر نے گرتے دم نہ پکارا حسین کو. لاشے پیشان بیٹے کو خود کو گرا دیا. روئے تڑپ تڑپ تو عرش خدا ہلا. نکلے لحد سے پیٹتے سر اپنا مصطفیٰ. زہرا پکاری تیری غریبی پہ میں فدا. زہرا پکاری تیری غریبی پہ میں فدا. اکبر نے عرض کی ذرا دل کو سنبھالیے سینے سے بابا جان یہ برچھی نکالیے سینے سے بابا جان یہ برچھی نکالیے وہ زانو جھک کے فخر براہیم ہو گیا بسم اللہ پڑھ کے برچھی کو جو ہاتھ میں لیا کھینچا اسے تو ساتھ کلیجہ نکل گیا اکبر نے ہاتھ سینے پہ رکھ کر یہ دی صدا خیمے میں لے چلو مجھے یا شاہ کل خیمے میں لے چلو مجھے یا شاہ کل پڑے سر پیٹتی نہ خیمے سے زینب نکل پڑے سر پیٹتی نہ خیمے سے زینب نکل پڑے حضرت نے نظر یاس سے دیکھا ادھر ادھر چلائے آؤ قاسم و عباس ہو کدھر اٹھتا نہیں حسین سے ہے لاشے پسر لاشیں لگے تڑپنے شہیدوں کے سر بسر آواز آئی آپ سے ہم دور ہو گئے کیسے مدد کریں کہ مجبور ہو گئے کیسے کریں مدد کہ مجبور ہو گئے شہ نے اٹھائی لاش پسر کہہ کے یا علی پاؤں نے خط زمین پہ کھینچا جلی جلی فضا نے جا کے بیویوں کو جب خبر یہ دی سر اپنا پیٹتی ہوئی زینب نکل پڑی خیمے میں غل تھا بیویوں کے شور و شہن کا غم سے عجیب حال تھا مولا حسین کا غم سے عجیب حال تھا مولا حسین کا
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you all very much for joining us in the continuing series with Samahat Sheikh Jaffer Ladak. The series of English Muharram Majalis is a collaborative project between Bab al-Ilm Mosque, Leeds Muslim Youth Group and Ahlul Bayt Cultural Centre. Thank you to the audience. Obviously it can be difficult if you don't understand Urdu to have Urdu recitation read, but we are all very grateful for the audience who is listening and learning. And as we say in Arabic, ahsant.
I can translate if somebody wants to.
Thank you. So we say ahsant in Arabic. We say, thank you very much, a beautiful recitation, as always, to all the Noha and Matam reciters. For those who also want a flavor of the Arabic Matam, it is downstairs after the Salah, after the Namaz. So if you feel like you want to try a slightly different cultural approach, you're also very welcome. So just a few points before the Sheikh starts. One, Ashura will be on Tuesday, both here in the centre as well as in Bab al-Ilm. So it's starting Tuesday morning, 11 a.m. That's at Bab al-Ilm. And straight after the majlis, there's a men's only majlis at Rasul Bai's house, and everyone is welcome from about 4 p.m. So we hope you all can join us at Rasul Bai's house, as well as joining us on Tuesday morning at Bab. Allah. Even the microphone just wants to hear so much, Sheikh. So yes, Tuesday morning, 11 a.m. we will see you there. Next thing, Samahat Sheikh's book on Yemen is being sold downstairs, and 100% of the money is going to support the disaster in Yemen. So not only if you want to learn about the importance and significance of Yemen in the Islamic history, and you want to support Yemen, please purchase a book downstairs. 100% of the money is going to support Yemen. And then we've got two last things before we start. Number one, as always, gentlemen, you're going to have to come closer. So we're going to have you come really close because we get a lot of latecomers. So please come. Keep coming. I like this brother here. Keep coming. Keep coming. There's lots of space here. We'll only ask. We've got people coming in already. Keep coming. You're okay now. You're fine, mashallah. Jannah is for you, I'm sure. I believe that. Keep coming a little bit more, because we're going to be very packed here tonight. That's point one. Point two, we're running a community survey. This community survey is helping us to understand how the community is changing. Year on year, decade on decade, new thoughts, new ideas, and new attitudes to religion. So, on the screen you have a QR code. I want you to take your phone out, scan the QR code, and fill it out. It's all confidential. It's all simple statistics, your name, your age, these kind of things, and your thoughts and approaches towards religious concepts. It's only going to take you a minute, so we're going to scan that QR code. If you don't have a phone, you are a mu'min, so mu'min's over there. Who needs phones in the majalis? Mu'min's over there. And everyone else which is a Muslim aspiring, scan the QR code. Ladies, scan the QR code. It's all anonymous, and it just helps our centres deliver better services, because we understand what's the demographic of the community, what's the size of the community, and what are the needs of the community, because we don't know. We will presume you're all the same. So, all confidential. You're gonna scan that QR code, ladies and gentlemen. You're gonna fill that out while we invite Sheikh to come and to get ready with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Oh yes, and the other thing, just because of the timings, we're going to be reading Matam in Urdu after Salah. So after Namaz, because we won't have time, will be Matam. So if you want Matam, it'll be straight after Salah, straight after Namaz, okay? Today, straight after Namaz, there will be Urdu Matam here. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala That is new finish. Until we finish about 1 hour, so that's not good. We'll go straight into some 12 on. It's on the book. So this thing that I think we'll need it. First thing would be ayah of Quran. Yes. And then after the first ayah of Quran, so this ayah first one, this one is the beginning. And then the other ayah from Surah Al-Baqarah. That one. And then slash. Thank you. Starting with this one. We'll start with the first. Thank you. For the love of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, one loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. For the love of Sayyid al-Shuhada, Abi Abdullah al-Hussein, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala. And for the love of the awaited Saviour of humanity, Imam al-Mahdi, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala, Faraj al-Sharif, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala. A'udhu billahi min ash-shaytanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Alhamdulillahi alladhi hadana li hadha wa ma kunna linahtadiya lawla an hadana Allah. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا الممجد بشير المصدق المصطفى الأمجد محمود الأحمد أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين ولعنة الله على الظالمين من الأولين والآخرين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد وقوله الحق: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولله ملك السماوات والأرض ويوم تقوم الساعة يومئذ يخسر المبطلون. وترى كل أمة جاثية كل أمة تدعى إلى كتابها اليوم تجزون ما كنتم تعملون.
هذا كتابنا ينطق عليكم بالحق إنا كنا نستنسخ ما كنتم تعملون آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوا على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Awaited Savior of humanity, Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, my respected teachers, elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. عظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصابنا أبي عبد الله الحسين صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. How can a community have a curriculum that ensures lifelong learning for the entirety of the community? The challenge that we have for anyone who gives majlis, male speaker, female speaker, giving it in English or in Arabic or in Farsi or in Urdu, whatever the language, is that in front of us, the speaker, we have such a range of people from different ages. There'll be people who are 5 years old all the way to 85 years old sitting in front. Different genders, different levels of experience and knowledge, different levels of interest. For some people, they will only come in the 10 nights of Muharram. Others, you will see them rain, sleet or shine. And how can a lecture for 30 or 45 minutes or whatever really encompass the diversity of needs across all of those different demographics? It can't. At some point, we need to realize that the evolution of the pulpit needs to take place within our communities. One of the ways is for us to be able to create a curriculum that helps with lifelong learning and responds and represents the different stages of development that people go through in their life cycle. Who you were when you were 10 years old, your level of ideas and thinking are very different to when you are 20, to when you are 40, to when you are 60. As much as majalis should be for everyone, you also need to realize that the Husayniyah, the masjid, the alim of the community needs to work with you to help you across the stages of your life and all the needs of the development of people within the community. Our community in Leeds is actually quite special. It's one of the largest cities in England. I think it could be the 4th largest city in England, correct? We have the Dar community, which is primarily made up of Arabic and Farsi speakers. We have the Bab community, which is primarily made up of English and Urdu speaking communities. But we also have a very large Afghani community. We also have a very large Kuwaiti student community here. And so the needs of the community across the city are going to vary. But in any case, we realize that as communities come together, there is the need for us to understand what is required across the stages of life, and not simply a majlis that tries to be as general as possible. We need to reflect the different needs of people in accordance with their demographics. What I want to be able to talk about tonight, inshallah, is for us to be able to reflect on what that sort of lifelong curriculum of learning may look like, and actually for you to help fill those dots in tonight. Over the last few nights, we've been speaking about the needs of youth. Previously we spoke about the issue of dedicating your children towards the service of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then we spoke about sort of the social media world that we live in and the oncoming onslaught of the metaverse that is ahead of us. And last night we looked at one of the greatest spiritual things that we can do to develop ourselves in the community, and that was shukr. And we highlighted that just the word doesn't suffice. Really, the reality of the word needs to be understood. And we stated yesterday that a community can be a grateful community. How? By giving back to those people in the area that are in need. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Al-Dahr, أهل البيت عليهم السلام ويطعمون الطعام على حبه مسكينا ويتيما وأسيرا. أهل البيت عليهم السلام would feed those people who were much in need in their community. They look after the people. If you are going to look after the things, the resources that you have in a community and gift it well to others, this is one of the ways in which you prove that you are truly shakir, grateful. Allah becomes mashkur. He appreciates what you have done and gives you even more in return. Tonight, inshaAllah, what we want to think about is start moving towards the end of our series. Tomorrow night, of course, is our last night of the series. But we start looking forward now as to what we want to be able to see ourselves towards some sort of hadaf, towards some sort of goal that helps us to be able to achieve the potential of our Shia Leeds community. So open the Quran, if you will, to Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 143. Everyone by now knows that you come to this majlis with your Qur'ans with you or with your phones with you, and you open the Qur'ans and read the ayat. And the ayat comes on the screen as well, just in case someone doesn't have their phone with them. Surah Al-Baqarah verse 143. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in this ayah that our Prophet is a witness over what we do, and that we are to be witness over others. Now just think about this for a second. If someone goes to court and they have to be a witness, they have to be shahid to something, what does it mean for you to be a witness in court? First and foremost, what are the characteristics that would be expected of you to be able to testify? Oh, brilliant. Impartiality. For you to be honest, right? For you to sit in that witness chair and say, I saw this is what happened, this is what should happen. For you to be a witness, there is an expectation that you are going to be truthful in your speech. If you are truthful in your speech, the presumption then is that the other party is going to believe what you have to say because you're the witness. The assumption is you're honest, so if you're speaking, I should believe what you have to say. So being a witness, it's not just being a witness, it's two-sided. You have to have a quality, and the other parties who are listening to you, it could be the judge that's listening to you, it could be the jury that's listening to you, but they have to also pay attention and appreciate what you have said. In this ayah and in many other places in the Quran, Allah Jalla Jalaluhu tells us that the Prophet is going to be witness over us. He's going to see what we do, and he will have to testify on the Day of Judgment as to what we did, so long as what he saw us do. Allah will interrogate him as to what he did, as to what he saw with his community before he left them. But at the same time, we are supposed to be witness to other communities. We are supposed to bear witness to the rest of mankind. I wonder what this means for our communities and the expectation that is placed upon us as a Muslim community. Remember, in the first night, we mentioned that the Arab community, Allah Jalla Jalaluhu blasts them the way in which they were living, right? Allah says, for example, that they were living on a pit of fire, just creaking, almost falling into that pit of fire. Surah Al-Imran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Holy Quran that they were living as if they were completely drunk. لَعَمْرُكَ إِنَّهُمْ لَفِي سَكَرَتِهِمْ يَعْمَهُونَ. Most surely these people are wandering blindly in their intoxications. Yet, after a few years with the presence of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah reveals about them another ayah, كُنْتُمْ خَيْرَ أُمَّةٍ أُخْرِجَتْ لِلنَّاسِ. You are the best of people heralded for mankind. Now in this ayah, not only was the Muslim Ummah the best of people at that time, we were also supposed to be witness to the rest of mankind. Observe their behaviors. Be able to testify to the truth. If we testify to the truth, the assumption is, what was that word, Hassan, that you used? We are impartial, we are honest, we are truthful, we are upstanding. That another community can look at us and say, this is where truth lies. They are witness over other communities. We can watch, observe, and lead with the truth. Look at this ayah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. Allah has made you a just, balanced nation. You see, we're not an extremist nation. We neither fall short of our duties, nor do we go too extreme into ideas. There's no ifrat and there's no tafrit either. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. But that you are supposed to be witness over humanity. Look at the level of expectation God places upon the Muslim community. And it continues. وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. And the messenger is going to be witness over you as well. The messenger watches over us. It is the messenger's duty to see how we behave, but also we have to represent to the rest of mankind as well. Now, we can ask ourselves, in the Muslim community, do we find that the Muslim community of any country is capable of being witness to mankind? Is it possible in the British community we find the Muslims capable of being witness to mankind? Can the Leeds community be witness to the rest of the Leeds population? This is the level of expectation that Allah Jalla Jalaluhu places upon us. Now, in order to achieve that level of distinction, where people in the city, it's leadership, it's local politicians, it's businessmen, it's educators, all of the demographics of society can look to the Muslim community and say, this is truly a community we can turn to for leadership and guidance. Surely, majlis, simple majlis does not suffice. There needs to be a higher level of Islamic education that allows us to tackle the challenges in the community, that allows us to be able to learn at the pace of evolution that we lead in our lives. Simply coming on a Thursday night and hearing a general majlis, or for 10 days in the month of Muharram, will not make us witness to mankind or witness over mankind. You know how witness over mankind was utilized in the Quran? I'll just give you a simple example. The Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam was given 4 verses of Quran regarding the practice of stopping riba, interest. I mentioned in a previous night the way interest worked at the period of Jahiliyyah. You had, for example, people, of course, who were impoverished, and so people would lend them money, but they would lend them at an interest rate that was so high it could not be paid back. It was purposefully high so that eventually I could take your business from you, I could take your house from you, right? It was completely exploitative, just like it is today. I've mentioned this before in a previous place here, but do you know that if you go to payday loans, you know what payday loan is, don't you? Yeah? If you go to payday loans, some of those payday lenders, they will charge 1,000% APR. There's no rule in this country that caps the amount of interest rate. So imagine if you borrow £100. People cannot afford. It's specifically designed to put you into cyclical debt so that you go broke and they can take your belongings. But of course, why should a government that's based on exploitation care for you in the first place to make legislation? In the same way that is there today, it was prevalent 1400 years ago, that it was the norm that they would put you into difficulty so that you had to give up and lose your business, your house, your assets to them. Not only this, if you were a slave and you tried to buy your freedom, again, it would be placed at such a high rate of interest, because you can't afford to purchase yourself out of slavery, can you? You're a slave. What money do you have? So the lender, the malik, would give you the money up front, but place such a high interest rate that you would never be able to pay it back, and you will always remain as a slave. And then they would say, okay, do you need money to be able to pay for your family for food? Get it from our shop, but we'll lend it to you at 20% APR. All of the system was designed to break you, just like it is today. The Quran revealed 4 verses. The first verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encourages for you to give up your riba. If you have any agreement that is based on interest, give it up. It's a recommendation. It's good for you. Allah will reward you. And it wasn't a compulsion. First one was encouraging behavioral change. Second and third verses made the prohibition. It's now haram for you to take and partake in riba. Therefore it must be stopped now, and anyone who partakes in it, you are at war with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is at war with you. Do you know the 4th verse that was revealed? It didn't speak to the Muslims. This is in the order of revelation, the tartib al-nuzuli, how it was revealed in the order. The 4th verse didn't address the Muslims. Do you know who it addressed? Which non-Muslims? Who said that? The Jews, yes. So even in Jewish law, interest is prohibited, but they were dealing in interest anyway. Notice the point. We are supposed to be shuhada ala nas, witness to the rest of mankind for truth. Tell me something. Could Allah tell the Jews to stop participating in riba when the Muslims were still participating in it? No. It sent 3 verses down to wean them off their bad practices. Once the Muslims had weaned themselves off the bad practice, Allah could then reveal a verse to the Jews and say, why are you participating in riba? The Muslims have weaned themselves off. Why can't you also wean yourself off it? But we had to be shuhada ala nas first. We had to first be in a position to say, we are good. We are not participating in the same evils as you. Can you see that? In the same way, for the entirety of the Muslim community, for us to represent ourselves to the rest of the world, as we said on a previous night, we cannot be embroiled in the same things that they're doing. Otherwise, what's the difference between us and everybody else? The Quran gave us this hadaf. The Quran gave us this huge goal, that this is what He wants, Allah wants from us as a community. And then showed us that we need to wean ourselves off certain practices to reach that point where we can be witness to mankind for the truth. People can look at us and believe in our speech and in our actions. Now on the screen, inshallah, what's going to come is a small diagram that helps us to think about our education cycle. As I said earlier on, what we have at the moment, by and large, in most communities, but in Leeds, as now someone who has had the honour of living here for 18 months, we generally have majlis. Right? Thursday night comes, muhadara. Yawm al-Jum'ah comes, we have khutbah. Istishhadat majlis, wiladat majlis, and everything else in between, right? It's majlis. But as we said, you have someone from 5 to 85, interested to disinterested. There's going to be people here that love majlis. They can't wait. And then there's going to be people who are dragged by their mum and dad because they have to be here. Not everybody is the same. Not everybody is there for the same reason. Yes, Ahmad, look at me like that. You weren't dragged here by your parents. I know you came here because you love it. Yeah? But you have a wide demographic of people that we have to address. And what you know is that at every stage of your life, your needs are very different. And so, general majlis, speaking about history or fada'il, doesn't meet your needs as you progress through life. And so there needs to be a lifelong curriculum of learning that respects and reflects the different stages of your life and the things that you need. So have a look at this diagram. I've divided it. Birth to the age of 10, 10 to 14, 14 to 18, 18 to 25, 25 to 40, and then 40 onwards. And these are just examples. You can disagree with the age brackets, but it's just an example for you. And at every stage, people need different levels of knowledge. Between ages of birth to 10, you need a certain kind of thing being taught to you. From 10 to 14, your development changes, your arena changes, what you're exposed to changes. Therefore, you need a different level of education. 14 to 18, your challenges are very different now. You're beginning to experience independence. You're now charting the course of your life. You're making life decisions for yourself. What your GCSEs are going to be, what your university studies are going to be. From 18 to 25, you're now in university. You're now starting to get married. You're starting to bring your first child into the world. Parenthood. You need a different set of curriculum for you. And by the time you are 25 to 40, you have now graduated. You've gone into the world of work. You're now the head of a family unit. You're now responsible for, purchasing things which are very large. You're investing. You need a different set of curriculum. You need a different set of teachings. Can once a week, on a Thursday night, and a Friday, and istishhad majlis speaking about an imam's history, and a wiladat majlis speaking about an imam's history, cover the needs that are there for your life in an Islamic context? No. So why do we imagine that the pulpit suffices you? It doesn't. It is not sufficient. But in the same way, it's not just the speaker who needs to give to you. You also need to you need to take interest. The community, the people of those demographics need to come forward and say, we have reached this point of our life. We need a topic on this. We need to address this matter. So let's do that for a few minutes. Let's just talk about this slide for 5 minutes together. Hands up, all of you, brothers and sisters, who fall within the first category of between 0 to 10. Only one?
9.
MashaAllah. May Allah bless you as a 9-year-old. One at the back. MashaAllah, sister. A few here. Oh, good. Okay, so we have 5, 6 in the crowd. Maybe more. Oh, a few beautiful hands up at the very back. My young friend. And you as well? Yes? How old are you? 6, MashaAllah. We're going to have, some of you are going to have to admit what age you are, huh? But I was kind to you. I didn't put 40 to 60, huh? I just put 40 and above, okay? And I won't tell you which one I fall into, but obviously it's between 18 and 25, right? Yes, 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 yes. So, give me an example of a topic specifically that is for your age, that you need to hear about in the context of your age.
Study a little harder.
Yeah, that's right. Studying in school a little bit harder. I very much like that. Excellent, good. And we had some young sisters at the back. Tell me, what might be something specific to your age? There might be a topic that you need in your curriculum, Islamic curriculum. Anything. The basics of religion, beautiful. The usul ad-din, absolutely. The fundamentals, the dhururiyat that we need to get to. That's absolutely right. Now, you know what? According to Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, in their ahadith, for children from this age, one thing that you need to instill in them is love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not to say that age 40 onwards doesn't, you do, but specifically for this age group, love for Allah, love for Ahlul Bayt alayhim wassalam, love for the Quran. You instill that in them at a young age. Now look again, it's also male and female. Now as we go through, you know that at different ages, male and female need slightly different things, don't they? Bulugh is at slightly different age, right? The sort of mindset and the level of responsibility, the requirements are slightly different as well. So as much as we divide it by age, we also have to divide it by gender as well. 10 to 14, hands up in the crowd. How many of you are age 10 to 14? MashaAllah. Give me one thing that might be specific. Sister, you can't look away. Okay, if you're embarrassed, it's okay. I don't want to pick on someone who's easily embarrassed. What could be good between 10 to 14, specifically for your age? What kind? So I'll give you some examples, right? Do you remember we spoke earlier on about the issue of bulugh just now, right? Look, between 10 to 14, there needs to be specific ongoing classes regarding bulugh. The ahkam of bulugh, the mentality, the mas'uliyat and responsibilities that come with bulugh. For example, social media, everyone now between 10 to 14 is getting a phone. They're starting to open up social media profiles, how to navigate that. That's specific for that age group. It's not to say someone who's 25 doesn't also need it, they do. But specifically, you cannot go without having bulugh classes for that age demographic. And similarly, it might be slightly different. Bulugh for girls, bulugh for boys. It's going to be slightly different topics as well in some cases. Hands up, who's 14 to 18? Tariq. I think I'm 14 to 18, yeah. 14 to 18, mashallah. Sister Zainab, what do you think should be specifically for a 14, you knew I was going to pick on you. If you put your hand up, it's your fault. What should be taught for 14 to 18-year-olds? Wonderful, their Islamic identity. You see, this person is now maturing, starting to know their place in the world. There's a degree of independence. I'm now encountering people from across. And I'm no longer looking at everyone as just single people. I'm saying now, you're from this background, you speak this language, you're from that culture. I need to know what I represent. That's something that needs to be taught. 18 to 25. I believe you, brother.
I'm on
the edge of the 25, huh? Yes, Shaukat uncle. Anyone else? 18 to 25? Yeah? Sister? What would be specific from age 18 to 25 that needs to be taught? Really good, I really like that. Managing finances. Now you know that doesn't come from the pulpit generally, right? 99.99% Mawlana, you'll never hear a discussion on managing finances. But as you said, it needs to be. Person's going to start taking debts now. They're going to start having access to credit cards, debit cards. They're going to start taking out university loans. They're going to have to start buying a car. By the time of 25, you might want to be on the property ladder. Islam needs to be taught to you and your demographic specifically. What else happens at age 18 to 25? A lot of her friends are getting married, having their first kids. Spouse selection needs to be addressed, right? And not just spouse selection, how to navigate a marriage. It's not easy. I expected more people nodding there to say yes, it's not easy. But everyone, no, it's great. It's great. Alhamdulillah, well done to you. Can you see? You need to have a curriculum that's dedicated to your circumstances. 25 to 40, the rest of you all need to put your hands up, huh? 25 to 40. What happens at 25 to 40, Shabs?
Start raising a family.
You start raising a family. You need to be understanding your duties as the head of the household. Do you know what wajib nafaqa is? Do you know whom and how you're supposed to spend upon and your duties? Navigating in-laws, navigating a wider family unit, your duties and priorities between your wife or your husband and the rest of the family. These are all questions that come up. You need to have that topic, don't you? What else happens age 25 to 40? Starting a business maybe. You have to pay homs maybe. What else? You have to wean yourself off terrible football teams maybe. What else? What else?
Preparing for the grave.
Okay, so if I don't want to be morbid, but yes, between 25 and 40. I would have taken that definitely at 40 onwards. So at 40 years old, definitely, you need to know how to write an Islamic will. Right? You should have your coffin. You should know what you want to do with your coffin, where you keep it. Right? Can you see that there are different stages, and the pulpit isn't necessarily capable of being able to address all of these topics. You need a lifelong curriculum, and it needs to also understand the gender requirements as well. This is something that we need to start building into our communities as soon as possible. Otherwise we're losing people through the cracks. So I'm going to continue on in this in a second, but I'm going to ask you again, all of you brothers and sisters, just to scoot forward as much as you can. We have people outside waiting to come in, and then we don't have to keep disturbing the majlis, inshallah. For the love of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali. Now, just to be able to expand upon this and how our ahadith and fuqaha, maraji' al-kiram, talk about the shift in responsibility and the knowledges that we are obligated to obtain and obligated to teach as well as you shift through different stages of your life. Hadith comes from the great companion Asbagh bin Nubata, companion of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. Asbagh says, يقول على المنبر. Imam Ali alayhi salam was on the minbar when he said this particular statement. He said, Ya ma'shara tujjar, O gathering of businessmen, tradesmen, al-fiqh thumma matjar. Learn the rulings that are upon you and then go into business. Not the other way around. You see here this demographic, this stage, 18 to 25, 25 to 40. Imam alayhi salam said, you need to learn the rules that are upon you and then start your trade. That's for everything. It doesn't matter what area of life you go into. Doctor, it doesn't matter if you're a business person, if you're in education, if you're in art, if you're in sports. By priority, you need to be able to avail yourself of those ahkam that are going to affect you. So you can see here how the age demographic responds to that particular hadith. Now our maraji' expand upon this a little bit, and they have slightly different rulings, but either way I want to show you how important it is for our community to develop a lifelong curriculum of learning that is led by you, that you know what's happening in your lives, and we can put together and say, these are the things that throughout the year need to be taught. These are the things that are specific to sisters that need to be taught, specific to brothers that are taught. So I'm going to show you, I'm reading from the website of His Eminence Grand Ayatollah As-Sayyid Ali Hussein As-Sistani, may Allah preserve him for us. Ayatollah As-Sistani says in ruling 2059. So this is on the chapter of Bay', chapter of selling, buying and selling. Mas'ala 2059. So if any one of you wants to be able to review it later for your own time. Sayyid As-Sistani says the following: it is befitting for a trader to learn the laws, the ahkam of buying and selling concerning the issues that they commonly encounter. It is better for you, it is befitting for you that whatever the issues are in your life that you are going to encounter with your area of expertise, your profession, you need to avail yourself of them. In fact, he continues, in fact, if he risks committing a haram act or abandoning a wajib act, because out of ignorance he does not know the laws that are upon him, it is necessary, it is wajib for him to learn those laws. You follow? So Sayyid Sistani's starting point is that it's better for you to acquaint yourself with laws, but if you risk a haram or omitting a wajib, then it's wajib for you to learn the laws that are going to affect you in your daily life, in your routines, in your professions. Other Maraji al-Kiram go a step further. I'm reading to you now from the rulings of His Eminence Grand Ayatollah Sheikh Nasir Makarim Shirazi, rahmatullah, Allah yatula amruhu as well, may Allah preserve him for us, in his work Zubdatul Ahkam. And he says the following, Rule 722 in his book of Ahkam: it is obligatory upon every Muslim to learn the rules of transactions to the extent that they need them. So Sayyid Sistani's starting position was what? It is mustahab for you to learn, but where you might make an error, it's wajib for you to learn. Ayatollah Nasir Makarim's position is no, it is not mustahab, it is obligatory for you to learn the rules of business transactions to the extent that you need them. It is same mas'ala, and it is obligatory upon the ulama to teach those rules. So now, not that I'm alim, but ulama of the community, they need to be able to know what is happening to you in your life at those stages of demographics, at those stages of evolution in your life, and be able to offer the ahkam that you need, lest you fall into sin and mistake. And you see the importance of this. Imam Ali alayhi salam said what? Ya ma'shar al-tujjar al-fiqh thumma matjar. Learn your rulings and then you can go off and become business people, not the other way round. Therefore, it is necessary as a community that we come together and we don't just rely simply on the idea that we have madrasa until you're 15, 16, Arabic school until you're 15, 16. And by the way, just as a reflection for you, I could be wrong here, you have more knowledgeable people here about the Arabic school. The Arabic school, its primary function is what? To teach Arabic, not deen. In our language we say diniyat, as the rules of religion, all the issues of religion. It's primarily teaching you to preserve your culture, not your deen. Now how many of the youth from Dar, for example, come on a Thursday night? How many come for Jum'ah? How many are being exposed to Islam regularly to build that knowledge? If the school is primarily teaching Arabic language, and then as a secondary it is being buttressed with deen, then which is coming first? Lugha is coming first over deen. Which one's supposed to come first, lugha or deen? Deen. Just a reflection for you. Think about these things very carefully if you're going to preserve your community. Right? We need to be able to build across our communities. The Kuwaiti youth, they are here. The Afghani community, the Bab community, LMYG, Dar Ahl al-Bayt, across our Shia communities, we need to have a centralized, lifelong curriculum that we know throughout the year these things are going to be taught. And you know that you have satisfaction that those topics that are needed for your life are regularly available to you. Otherwise, we fall short of our duties. And Ayatollah Makarim said it's wajib upon the ulama. So now, according to Ayatollah Makarim, at the very least, even though I don't do his taqleed, his point is, we, the ulama, are going to be held accountable on the Day of Judgment. Allah is going to ask me, did you teach bulugh classes? Did you talk to the youth, the shabab, about this issue at their stage of life? Did you provide people with making a right will, a wasiyah in their life? It's going to be upon me, it's going to be upon you. We really need to rethink the structure of our community, the very basis, the dururiyat of our community setup, for us to reflect a more Islamic community. The hadaf of which is, we become shuhada ala nas. we represent ourselves capable of presenting ourselves to the rest of mankind, inshallah. Now that should be sufficient for us to be able to explain it from this perspective. There's now two more points I want to be able to raise and really help us to be able to think about this lifelong curriculum and dig into it a little bit deeper. A curriculum that reflects a Quranic vision helps a community to understand really deep and nuanced challenges of its time. You all know that when you look across the lifespans, the movement of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, the circumstances changed, didn't it? What was happening to Imam Ali alayhi salam was different to Imam al-Hasan, to Imam al-Hussein, Imam al-Sajjad, Imam al-Baqir, Imam al-Sadiq, ila akhirihim. Salamullahi alayhim ajma'in. But as the situation changed, the way the Imam explained the deen also changed to reflect circumstances. And sometimes part of this knowledge needs to be that our communities are taught some of the nuances of the depth of the religion of Islam that affects all of us as masses and the way in which we interact with other communities. Let me give you an example. In the last 2 months, we had a big fight, a big problem on our hands in the UK community, didn't we? There was a film that came out by a sort of renegade, backwards group of Shia who have completely misunderstood the relationship between Sunnis and Shias and the history of Islam. And it's more important for them to just get their narrative out, and basically it doesn't matter what happens to the rest of you. So long as we are satisfied that we get to say whatever we want and make a film about whatever we want. And you know that film, the Lady of Heaven film that came out under the auspices of Yasser al-Habib and those behind him who backed him. And you know that our Maraji', all of our leading Maraji' banned the film, and some went as far as even banning you and I from watching the film. Our own Maraji' banned us from watching a film that was about Lady Fatima alayhi salam. Why? Because it was specifically provocative. Because it was not really about Lady Fatima alayhi salam. It was more to try to bash the Sunnis over the head with. And because these people are ignorant and backwards in their thinking, that they popularized this particular narrative. It becomes obligatory upon our ulama to be able to teach our communities the depth of the religion and the nuances of the religion, so that when you make your decisions, when you speak about the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, you know how to navigate certain points, certain topics with maturity. The same way you're expected to mature with your age and go into new life stages, get married, have children, be the head of a household, your religious knowledge is also supposed to mature, and the way in which you utilize your religious knowledge is supposed to mature. This is part of the lifelong learning of curriculum. Now I'm going to read to you some ahadith, and you may never have heard of these hadith. They'll shock you. If you haven't heard these hadith, they will shock you about how you are supposed to be sensitive with your level of knowledge. I'm going to say this. The school of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam is the most genius school of thought, bar none. It requires an intellectual person to understand, not part of the hadith corpus, all of the hadith corpus. Now, just because a person hasn't acquainted themselves with all of the hadith corpus isn't the fault of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. It's upon me and you to read our books of ahadith and to understand how we're supposed to use certain narrations and mature with this and where it comes to. If someone's going into university tomorrow and they're going to sit with Sunnis, they're going to sit with different people from ABSOCs, different people from ISOCs, you need to understand the full picture of Islam and not a narrow picture of Islam. Listen to these hadith. This hadith comes to us from our 6th Imam Jaffer Ladak, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. ما أجد من أحدثه ولو أني أحدث رجلا منكم بالحديث فما يخرج من المدينة حتى أوتى بعينه فأقول لم أقله. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam said, I do not find anyone to tell my hadith to without them spreading what they should not have spread. I do not find a Shia that I can tell my hadith to in confidence without them spreading it where they should not have. And if I do find a person whom I can entrust my hadith to, he doesn't leave the city of Medina, but that someone else from the Shia misunderstanding comes to me asking about that same hadith, and I have to tell him I didn't say that hadith out of taqiyya. Do you understand? Sometimes even the Imam had to deny his own hadith because it was too sensitive for some ears. Do you understand? Now, unless I, or Shaykh, Sayyid, Alim, explains to you taqiyya and the whole modus operandi of taqiyya and where and how it is supposed to be implemented, an ignorant person from amongst us doesn't understand it and goes ahead and makes a film throwing all of us under the bus. Goes on Twitter and starts cursing and abusing. Starts going into university and swearing at the brothers from the ISOC. Goes and go. Doesn't understand the basics of the deen. Look, Imam alayhi salam says, I can't find someone that I can trust to understand how to navigate the sensitivities of my speech. I need to explain this to you before you go into university. Before someone opens their big mouth and ends up killing someone in Parachinar, in Afghanistan, in Kabul because of my words, because of your words. Yesterday a bomb went off. 2 days ago a bomb went off inside Masjid Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam, killing 40 of our Afghani brothers, correct? Another hadith. Listen to this hadith, you'll be shocked. You really don't know this hadith. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam says, listen to this and understand it carefully. Remember I said, don't take a hadith in isolation. Understand the hadith in the wider context. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam says, do not mention Ali or Fatima. Imam Ali and Lady Fatima, don't talk about them. Iyakum wa dhikr Ali wa Fatima. Imagine an Imam Ma'soom telling you, don't speak about Imam Ali alayhi salam. Don't even mention his name. Did you know this hadith exists? Do not mention Ali or Fatima, as nothing is more detestable to the people than the mention of Ali and Fatima. Now, is that a temporary prohibition or a permanent prohibition? Temporary, of course it's temporary. Otherwise we wouldn't be able to mention their names today. It's a temporary prohibition. But do you understand why an Imam Ma'soom had to tell his Shia for a few weeks, for a few months, whatever, don't even mention, it's too dangerous for you. Do you understand? The sensitivities of knowledge. Sometimes a community has to be taught certain things about how to navigate certain difficult conversations as well before you go out into the wider world. Last thing, part of making up this sort of curriculum. Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam and the Quran helps to wean people off the challenges in a particular community, right? You know, especially the stories of Banu Israel, whenever there was something that was a problem within them, Allah disciplined them in a certain way, right? With the slaughtering of the cow, al-Baqarah, it was a means of discipline so that they took the love of the idol, the calf idol, out of their heart. When they were too much into business and wouldn't even come to the temple to worship Allah, Allah had to discipline them by putting in a day of Sabbath and saying, on this day, just for one day, don't go to the marketplaces, you don't need to fish, you don't need to make money, for one day, Banu Israel, just give it up, to discipline them, right? You know this. Similarly, in our communities, when we create a curriculum, if there are particular challenges in the community, it needs to be addressed in that curriculum. Every community is different. What happens in Bradford community might be slightly different to Leeds, slightly different to Manchester, slightly different to London, different to what's happening in Karachi, different to what's happening in New York. Whatever the challenges are, that needs to be addressed specifically. Look, Forgive me, I'm going to say it, and it may, people may be upset. I'll give you an example. In some communities, there is still this idea that Sayyid cannot marry non-Sayyid. Right? It's a sensitive issue for some people. It needs to be addressed. There needs to be a distinguishment between your culture and Islam. And it needs to be addressed. It doesn't matter how angry you get at me. I don't care. But we're going to talk about it. We'll tell you that you making a prohibition on this is not religious. You see, there are certain challenges in some communities that need to be addressed. Allah is my witness. Allah is my witness. It was a Friday afternoon after Salat al-Jum'ah. I was in Hujjat Stanmore. I'd given the khutbah. I came out. The car park was almost empty. And an uncle came up to me, may Allah bless him. And I was trying to get in my car to leave or something. I remember I was trying to leave. I had a lesson or something. And he says to me, can I tell you a story? I said, go for it. He said, I'm going to tell you a story about our community from back home. And then I'll explain it. I said, go for it. Please, uncle. Very nice. He goes, back home, we had a Maulana and he came and he noticed that our community was heavily into riba, heavily into interest. And so he came on the pulpit and he spoke about the hurma of interest. So when he came off, we said to him, Maulana, if you say this again, we're going to kick you out. Next day, Maulana went on the pulpit and he spoke about the hurma of riba. So what did they do? They kicked him out. This is the elderly man telling me that his community back in the day did this to whoever, Fulan Alim. And then he said to me, if you start delving into the politics of the community, we will throw you out as well. And then he clarified politics. He made sure I understood it. Not politics, yani Boris Johnson and all the numpties. You can deal with them, they don't care. If you talk about the politics of our community, we will throw you out. Allah is my witness. He said that on a Yawm al-Jum'ah after the Salah, inside the Husayniyah. The curriculum doesn't care for your sensitivities. I repeat that again. It does not care for your sensitivities. And the curriculum needs to include those things as well, that need to be addressed in the community, the problems that exist within the community. So number one, it needs to be across your age demographic. Number two, your gender demographic. It needs to reflect the different issues that come up with the ahkam, those things that are wajib for you. It needs to be able to reflect the way the Quran deals with these sorts of matters, such as the sensitivities of what's happening in the community needs to be talked about, and the weaning off of certain sins that may exist within the community as well. My humble advice to you is, come together, think about these things with me, and we need to be able to build that sort of lifelong curriculum. And it needs to be across all of our Shia communities, such that everybody is able to benefit from it. Look at that youth on the 10th of Muharram, that his level had reached, whereby he was the manifestation of the Prophet himself. Look at where his education had taken him to, that he looked like the Prophet, he sounded like the Prophet, he walked like the Prophet, he engaged people like the Prophet. You know, there is this line of Gham that says that when the attack on the house of Lady Fatima alayha salam took place, the companion Bilal al-Habashi had professed that he would never recite the adhan again. Bilal was the muadhin of Medina al-Munawwarah. He took an oath, I will never recite the adhan again, because I don't want to give legitimacy to these people that have attacked the house of Fatima alayha salam. Accordingly, Fatima alayhi salam asked Bilal, please let me hear the adhan once more, because I miss the time of my father Rasulullah. It is said that when Bilal started reciting the adhan, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. When he reached that point, Fatima alayhi salam collapsed out of grief for missing her father. I want to ask you, can you imagine the grief of Sayyida Zainab when she heard the adhan of Aliyun al-Akbar on the morning of Ashura? Can you imagine how much she must have grieved, remembering her grandfather, remembering her father, remembering her mother, remembering her brother, when Aliyun al-Akbar is reciting that adhan? We are told that Aliyun al-Akbar was the first of the shuhada from Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Everybody else who went to Hussein said, "Oh Imam, allow me to go." Everyone was stopped by Imam. Imam would say, "Please stay, I need you to stay. Please do not go." When Aliyun al-Akbar came, there was no such thing as trying to hold him back. "You are my son, my eldest son, you represent me, go to the battlefield." Our dhakirin tell us that Aliyun al-Akbar is given a statement. He is told by Imam al-Hussein, "Go and get permission from your mother." It is said that he goes towards Layla and says, "Do I have your permission?" To which of course she says, "My son, I'm so proud of you. Go and defend your father." Ali al-Akbar comes back and says, "I took permission from my mother Layla." Imam al-Hussein responds and says, "Oh my Akbar, I did not mean that mother of yours. Go towards Zainab and ask her for her permission, because she has brought you up so much. She has looked after you in your life. You need to be able to ask Zainab for permission before you leave." I want you to imagine that moment when the nephew of Sayyida Zainab comes to her and says, "Oh auntie, do you allow me to leave?" How does Zainab alayhi salam let the light of Hussein's eyes leave towards the swords? Ali al-Akbar goes out and he fights so bravely, but it gets to the point that the thirst overcomes him. We are told that the mother of Ali al-Akbar is standing by the tents and she wants to know what is happening to her son. All she can do is look at the face of Hussein, and every time the face of Imam al-Hussein is seen smiling, she knows her son is destroying the enemy. But every time there is a fear on the face of Imam al-Hussein, she knows that her son is being surrounded by the enemies. She knows that he is being attacked from every side. This is why the mother's dua is so great, because in that moment of love and panic, she calls out to Allah, "You are the one who returned Yusuf back to Yaqub. Return my Yusuf back to me. I wish to be able to see my Yusuf one last time." Ali al-Akbar returns back towards the camps. As he does so, it is said that he presents himself to Abu Abdullah. He says, "Father, the thirst is killing me. I cannot handle it. It is too much for me to wear this heavy armory, to swing this heavy sword when I am overcome by thirst." We are told that Imam al-Hussein, in such a level of pity, extends his own tongue and says, "If there is even a drop of saliva that I can give you, oh my dear son, take it from me." He looks at him, he says, "Father, your mouth is even drier than mine. How are you surviving as an elderly man whilst I still have saliva in my mouth?" We are told that at this point, because of the heat of the afternoon, Ali al-Akbar takes off that armory, that chain mail that is going to defend this chest of this young 18-year-old man. I'm going to ask you a question. How long is a spearhead? And how wide is the chest of a man?
Because in a minute, the entirety of that spearhead is going to be thrust into that chest. If Ali ibn al-Akbar had his chainmail on him, then maybe he could have survived that thrust. But without it, oh Ali ibn al-Akbar, how is your chest going to be able to survive it? It is going to be torn into pieces. And with this, Ali ibn al-Akbar begins to depart from the last time. We are told that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam begins to follow Ali ibn al-Akbar into the battlefield. Ali ibn al-Akbar looks behind him and says, "Oh father, why are you following me?" He says, "Oh Akbar, if you had a son like I have a son, you would also be following him into the battlefield. Oh Akbar, all I want is to be able to see your face for as long as I can." Akbar enters into the battlefield for the last time. There is an enemy by the name of Abi Murrah. The narration says that he says to his combatants, his side of Yazid's army, he says, "I will make Hussein weep over his son." They looked to him and they said, "What do you have with this young man? What has he done to you? Leave him alone." He says, "No, by Allah, I want to see Hussein cry over his son." This man, Abi Murrah, he hides behind a tree, and when Ali ibn al-Akbar is fighting, cowardice after cowardice, he hides behind the tree, and as Akbar is fighting, he takes that spearhead and he thrusts it into the chest of Akbar. Akbar is upon his horse. The narration says that he takes that spear and lifts Akbar into the air and throws him towards the ground. Akbar calls out, "Father, accept my final salutation." It is told by al-Dhakirin that every one of the shuhada called out, "Adrikni ya Aba Abdullah, come to my aid," except Ali ibn al-Akbar. Do you know why? Because Akbar did not want his father to see him in that state, so he does not call for his father to come to him. "Alaykum minni salam, accept my salutation, O father." Imam al-Hussein falls towards the ground. "Oh Akbar, how can I live after you?" You can imagine that he is crawling towards Ali ibn al-Akbar. Imagine the state that he finds Akbar in. He has to bring Akbar back towards the tents. Can you imagine the women and children coming out, seeing Akbar's body being brought back to them? They are calling out, "Wa Muhammadah," not just because of the Prophet, but because it's the image of the Prophet that has just been slaughtered in front of them. The narration says that he places Akbar's broken body inside the tent. He places his hand upon that body. He looks towards the sky. Hussein says, "Oh Allah, you bear witness that they have taken my son from me."
ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. For the love of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and Ali ibn al-Akbar, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.